Join Yvette Walker every Tuesday at 4 o'clock p.m. on KMET ABC News Radio, 1490 AM, FM 98.1, and Internet KMET TV for the Southern California Business Report. The show is dedicated to highlighting successful businesses and the individuals behind them. Yvette interviews the incredible people managing these enterprises that range from awe-inspiring sole proprietors to world-renowned organizations. The Southern California Business Report, Tuesdays at 4 o'clock p.m. Welcome to KMET 1490 AM ABC News Radio and the Southern California Business Report with Yvette Walker, a show dedicated to highlighting successful Southern California businesses and the people behind them.
Welcome and thank you for joining the Southern California Business Report on ABC News and Talks, KMET 1490 AM, 98.1 FM, and KMET TV. I'm Yvette Walker, live blasting our signal from the center of Southern California, serving a population of over 25 million. Get us crystal clear and on demand by downloading the free KMET live streaming app on Google Play or the Apple App Store. A huge shout out to the team. Mitch, Bill, and Sean, as always, I love you. And to our special advisory committee, Bill Morris of UCI School of Business, Jose and Camila Rubio, thank you so much. Don't forget to check out the Jay Kaplan Show, also on KMET on Fridays at 3. Today, I have the distinct honor and privilege to be introducing today Jason Anderson, District Attorney for San Bernardino County, talking about supporting victims of crime, honoring the humanity of all involved in the criminal justice system, and restoring a culture of service and accountability to the District Attorney's Office. San Bernardino County District Attorney Jason Anderson. Mr. Anderson has been a member of the California State Bar since 1997. He graduated from Regent University School of Law in Virginia in 1996. Mr. Anderson served as a deputy district attorney for the County of San Bernardino from 1998 until 2014. In this capacity, he worked as a prosecutor, handling a variety of serious cases, particularly in the Crimes Against Children unit for 13 years. Mr. Anderson has been married for 26 years and has 2 children. District Attorney Anderson's mission includes respecting and inspiring confidence in the rule of law both inside and outside the office, collaboratively ensuring justice with excellence, integrity, and compassion, stewarding public resources to hold the guilty accountable, support victims of crime, and honoring the humanity of all involved in the criminal justice system, as well as restoring a culture of service and accountability to the San Bernardino County District's Office. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Anderson.
My pleasure. Thank you, Yvette. Very, very happy to be here.
Wonderful. So as you know, one of the first questions I ask all of our guests is to please walk us through your journey, take us through how it is that you became a district attorney, and paint a picture about what that looks like.
Well, I wanted to be a lawyer from a very young age. And so my dad's an attorney, and I used to go to his office and watch him in court. I was really fascinated by the interaction that he had with people. And then early on, I really developed a real interest in criminal justice, crimes. Read a lot of Sherlock Holmes when I was younger. Actually read all of them. I thought that was kind of cool, all the mysteries. I grew up in a very small town in West Virginia, like not even on the map. And we had a little library that was actually a double wide trailer. And I remember going to the library and picking out all the books that had to either do with the assassination of John Kennedy, or the New York Times had this big book where it had all the headlines of major crimes. And I would just read through those and be fascinated with the stories and the journalism involved with that. And so, going to law school, always had a bend to criminal law. And then I had some advice while I was in law school from some people that I knew in law enforcement, and said, you should try to pursue the DA's office. And so not long after I passed the bar, I got in with the office, and it was a natural fit, and I loved it. And so, that was just kind of the progression. And fortunately for me, I was never disappointed that, my dreams weren't reality in terms of the work that I got to do and the people I got to work around. And so that was just phenomenal. And even when I left and went out into private practice for about 5 years, I still enjoyed, even though it was a different perspective, I just enjoyed the camaraderie, the advocacy, sometimes the fighting, all respectful professional advocacy that's required, and the adversarial nature of our system. I just loved it. The mix-up where you could be in court and really, disagree with people, and then you'd be friends with them and be cordial to them outside. I mean, it's a real professionalism, I think, if you do it the right way, and it's just a wonderful area. And the criminal justice system has such a big impact on people's lives that it's just great to be a part of.
Wow. Well, you sound like you were born and raised for this role. Absolutely, from day one.
Well, I've been lucky. I've been very fortunate to have people around me that have been mentors. I mean, the greatest thing that happened to me in my life was meeting my wife, and really turned my life around in terms of actually bringing me to California. I mean, I was a hillbilly in West Virginia, and she's from California, so we chased a job for her out here, and professionally, that really, I think, changed the direction for me, and so I always credit her on that. But even early on, having people that you could look up to on both sides, not only prosecutors, but defense attorneys, civil lawyers, who, you would listen to and you could watch and observe, that mentorship, those types of things, the qualities that you admire in everybody, that you can kind of put that together and be fortunate enough to come back in this position to manage our office is just a real privilege for me. But it would not have been possible if it hadn't been for so many other people pouring into me in doing this. And I'm just fortunate to be surrounded by great people currently to do it. And, part of that is looking back on those experiences. I guess I consider myself kind of an old timer, I suppose, that we have a lot of new young lawyers that we're trying to instill that mentorship program back into, that they're going to be the future of the criminal justice system here. We want them to observe and learn from people who have come before, and sort of have what I had, because, you always look back and see what are the most positive things that you have. And that's being impacted and shaped by people that you came up with. I mean, even as a young lawyer, you think you know a lot, but you go up against an experienced lawyer and you get rolled a couple times, and you realize you realize iron sharpens iron.
Right.
And sometimes people forget that these days. They think that, well, we need the easier path. Well, the easier path isn't the path that actually teaches you. I learned more from my mistakes than I ever did from any of my successes. So we're just trying to pass that along. And looking at the office in terms of the impact that we have here in the county, we're the largest law office in the county. People don't realize that. There's 220
Wow.
lawyers here. We have a total of 570 people that I get the privilege of working with. There's no other law firm in San Bernardino County that is that large, it located in the county. So we have a big responsibility, and we take it serious.
Oh my goodness. Wow, that is incredible. So please share with us what role the DA plays in the community and in the business community as you see it.
Well, first and foremost, we are considered a constitutional officer. We play a vital and singular constitutional role as it relates to the community and the criminal justice system from this aspect. We are solely responsible for reviewing charges that police submit to determine whether we'll charge somebody with a crime. Obviously, the standard is we have to be able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. But we're the only body in the county that can actually do that. The police can arrest people on probable cause, and they can make individual suspects, but they can never actually make somebody a defendant. We're the only organization in the county that can make someone a defendant, which is huge. That's a big responsibility that we have, and I hope that we always impart to people that we recognize it. So that's our number one thing, is to hold people responsible for committing crimes, and then within the system, the degree to which we hold them responsible, we hope that matches justice in terms of what our residents in our county believe that justice should be, both from a subjective, but more importantly from an objective standpoint, that there's equal protection, there's due process. So that's what we do in terms of our role. And the California Constitution gives us that ability. The California Penal Code gives us that ability. And one of the things, Yvette, that people don't realize that's so big about this responsibility in the office is we also can turn cases down. So the police can arrest somebody and recommend charges, but if we don't file the case, that's not reviewable. There's not a single thing anybody can do. We do that a lot, and that's a big, powerful thing, and that has its impact. So that, from a constitutional standpoint, is what we do. From a community standpoint, obviously, we recognize that the DA's office plays a vital role, that if we are respecting the rule of law, members of the community who are either residents, business owners, employees, employers, tourists, visitors, they have an expectation that we all operate under an idea that will respect others. And when we don't do that through taking their property or hurting them, or assaulting them, or being involved in the wrong activities, the public, the community, business community particularly, expects us to hold people responsible, so everybody understands what the boundaries are. And so from a community standpoint, that's a big part of what the DA's office does. And then it's very technical in court, right? Because we're dealing with the rules of court, the rules of evidence, the rules of criminal procedure. That takes some special training. And so we need to make sure that we do that the right way within the system, so that if people come within the system, they're all treated fairly, right? And that's different than everybody being treated equal. You have to have equal protection under the laws. You have to have due process. But we try to treat people fairly, meaning how do they deserve to be treated based upon their individual qualities and what are the facts and circumstances of their case. So when you're talking about, we administer over 65,000 cases a year. That's a big job when you're talking about, dividing that up among 220 lawyers. So that's really a big impact that we have. And so that affects everybody daily in our community.
Right. So on that note, can you please talk about the mechanisms that ensure fairness and equity of the discharge of the legal, of the laws as it applies to your office?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the standard for us to file charges is that we have to be convinced that we can prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, because everybody is presumed innocent until proven guilty. And even when we look at cases, we know that if those cases go into the system, the presumption is they're innocent until we prove them guilty. And so we have to file based upon, can we prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt? There's many cases every year that we turn down where we know somebody's committed a crime against someone else, but we can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, and those cases are turned down. So the first leverage point is making sure that we adhere to that same standard, and therefore everybody's starting with the same presumption, and we're filing the case based on the same standard. Now, within that, obviously, we know that if our charging decisions are correct, there are many reviews in the process. Obviously, anybody who's charged with a crime is going to have a right to counsel, whether they can afford one or not. There's going to be standards of proof. There's going to be rules of evidence that the judges are going to hold us responsible for. We are responsible as prosecutors to give over all of the information that we have on a case that is material that we believe could possibly be exculpatory to a defendant. Because again, we keep in mind that the person is innocent until proven guilty. Their side, their attorney has to have all the information in order to evaluate the case. And then we go through a number of litigation steps to ensure that there are checks and balances, that the system, either through a judge or an adversary on behalf of the defendant, is testing the charges that we file. Hey, Anderson, are you right on this? Did you file the right charges? Is the degree right? Should it have been a misdemeanor? Should it have not been filed at all? So we want to make sure that every case goes through that process, and so that it is checked through a neutral judge and an adversary, and that's how the truth is forged in our system. And we want to apply that to everybody. We realize there's always going to be disagreements, and there are going to be cases in which we file that sometimes we lose them, right? That's the system. There's going to be cases that we file that people disagree with. There's going to be cases we turn down that people disagree with. But I'm comfortable in terms of the standards and the policies that I have in place. It goes back to our mission statement that you were talking about earlier, respecting the humanity of everyone involved. Make sure we're just not thinking about what is it from a prosecutor standpoint that we're going to do. We need to look at this more globally. And I think that's the best way to make sure that you have the fair protections that apply to everybody in the system.
Perfect. So are there community stakeholders and partners that are integrated with your efforts to carry out this mission?
Well, yes. And so you have to understand that the components of the criminal justice system include a couple different disciplines. So it's the prosecutor's office. Every defendant who's charged has a right to counsel. A lot of those cases are handled by the public defender's office because many people cannot afford an attorney of their choice. If they can, then they get a private attorney in terms of that. And so you're going to have two attorneys you're going to have a prosecutor and a defense attorney who understand the criminal justice system. So they're going to come together. So there's going to be a community component of that, because you're dealing with people that are, on the defense bar who are saying, hey, I want to challenge everything you're saying, Anderson. I want to challenge everything the office is saying. So that's important. The other community factor are judges in terms of it. Their job is to remain neutral and to make evaluations of evidence, of standards of proof. Then you have probation that gets involved. In terms of what we deal with oftentimes with other community partners, is those may come into play depending on the path that a criminal case takes. So one of our community partners, aside from our own victim witness advocate, our victim services bureau within our DA's office, If we have victims that need services, then we can refer them over to House of Ruth, Project Sister. If people are involved in human trafficking, there's Open Door. There's all kinds of these community partners that we deal with. And then if a defendant were to be in a situation where they're going to go down maybe a path of a treatment court, whether they be a veteran, whether there be mental health issues, then we partner with different nonprofits in the community that can offer those services. So it's a whole thing that comes together in terms of it. And we deal with nonprofits, we deal with faith-based organizations. So there's a lot of components. There's kind of this industry that is made up within the criminal justice system that the system relies upon for others to offer services to reach what I talked about earlier, which is what's the level of justice for this particular individual in terms of that. Now, we have other things that we deal with the public in terms of education components. We deal with schools to educate kids. We give kids opportunities to come in here. So there's a lot of things that go on with that.
Beautiful. So can you please paint a picture on the concepts and efforts to convey these principles to balance freedom and justice in the educational environment?
Yeah, I think it's important for what you're giving me the opportunity to do today is very vital. Just to be able to talk about the criminal justice system almost from a standpoint of just having a conversation and letting people understand a little bit more about the discipline that a lot of people don't fully understand. And that's understandable with how busy lives are. But if you look in terms of most great TV and movies are all made up of the criminal justice system, but it gives you the best facets of it, the most exciting facets of it. We deal every day with the mundane. And so the mundane can be parts that people don't realize about. So we try to do as much communication about what I've been talking about for the last 15 minutes or so with you. But we've kind of gone beyond that. When I first came into office at the end of 2018 and then started full-time in 2019 as the elected DA, from my years of teaching and dealing with people, I realized there was misconceptions about the criminal justice system. So I formed what I call the Community Commission. And so I asked, we have 5 district supervisors in San Bernardino County that are the governing body over the county from a county standpoint. I asked each of the 5 to nominate 3 people from their district to sit on a commission. I wanted them to pick them. I didn't want to pick them. I didn't want it to be an echo chamber. I didn't want to make it look like it was to sit around and let's talk about how great the DA's office is. I wanted a diverse group, and I mean diverse from every aspect. It didn't matter to me. And we have a diverse community in San Bernardino County. It's huge. So we started meeting with the first community commission in the spring of 2019. And I ran them through every facet of the criminal justice system. We met for 18 months. The first 2 meetings, I basically gave them a primer of what the criminal justice system is, what our role is, kind of what I've just briefly talked to you. And then we let them pick all of the topics that they wanted to pick. So we went through everything. And so these 18 folks started to understand, hey, I didn't realize the DA's office did this, or I didn't realize you actually turn cases down. I didn't realize that you had treatment courts. Well, what about when this happens? And what about when that happens? So we met. Now, towards the tail end of that first community commission is when George Floyd was murdered in Minnesota. So you can imagine the conversations that then opened up. And fortunately for us, we had been together for almost 2 years and we're very comfortable. So then we started talking about all these different aspects of use of force by law enforcement. What are the standards? And so that was a great educational component of it. From there, we started to think, okay, these are adults. Let's see if we can't get it into the schools. So we reached out to the schools and we're trying to open pathways to have young people do internships in the DA's office or in these other disciplines that I've talked about within the court system, probation, the public defender's office, or even the courts. So these kids can come and they can figure out, hey, I know what my friends tell me about the criminal justice system or what I've heard from my family. What if I go experience it myself? Maybe it's a career for me, or maybe I just get my questions answered and I get to experience some pretty cool stuff. So that's what we've been trying to do.
Wow, I love that. It's absolutely brilliant. And so what is the feedback and what are the outcomes that you've had in relation to these efforts?
We have, in terms of the community commission, is phenomenal. I mean, that just pays dividends from the standpoint of being able to have 5 or 6 hour conversations with community members, very robust, sometimes vehement disagreements, but at the end, everybody's shaking hands and they're talking, and we come back in 3 months and we talk again. What that does is it gives me hope that if we could get past all the rhetoric and actually get people in a room and do active listening instead of just labeling people, we can actually make best progress at the local level. So that's been a very tangible thing that we've had. One of the other things is that in talking with the adults about them understanding their civil liberties that we all possess as a result of the California and U.S. Constitution, we actually developed a curriculum involving civil liberties in every aspect of what the rights that we have as private citizens when we encounter a police officer or a school official. So I worked for about a little over a year to put the curriculum together, the outline together. I took it to the county superintendent of schools, Ted Alejandre, and they worked it, and they let us teach it. And so about 2 months ago, we finished a 6-week program where I was in the classroom with another one of my colleagues, and we were literally teaching kids about their constitutional rights. And that was phenomenal. The first couple of weeks, the kids were like, we don't know what to ask. Who's this guy? What's going on? But then we would start to relate it. And then we had a lot of teachers and administrators in the room that would help facilitate the conversations. And by the end, these kids were completely involved, and they were asking good questions. And they were, hey, why does law enforcement do this? And why do they get mad? And, if I'm the passenger in a car and my friend is driving, gets pulled over, how come I get pulled out of the car? We talked about all that stuff. So that's the real educational component that I think helps in understanding and relationships. We want young people to be able to have the same conversations that I'm having with the adults on the community commission.
Right. So can you talk a little bit about those that are delivering this message to the students for the community commission?
Yeah, it's amazing. We have people that own businesses. We had one of our first commissioners was a deputy warden in a prison, and now she's the warden at a prison in San Diego. We have people that have had very negative interactions with law enforcement. We have several pastors that were on the community commission, and so we had a major field rep for one of our local legislators. And so the ability to talk about the criminal justice system and to honestly, for me, to be critical of some of the laws that were passed, to have that person's field rep in the room to understand, we never thought about that, or we didn't know that was the impact. That was just amazing. And so they would go back and they would report to people in their community. And then the next meeting, they come back with 10 questions and go, hey, I talked to these people about this. What about this? We had a number of teachers. We had attorneys in there. We had retired law enforcement. And so you get all these different views. And it was, so they're the best folks to go out and say, hey, we're getting an up close look at the criminal justice system in San Bernardino County, and we're getting an opportunity to actually question, examine it, and make suggestions. And that's what's been happening. So that's the real. So if my idea is if community members get an active interest in the criminal justice system, they're the best ones to figure out what is justice going to look like at a local level. I'm not going to do any good if I just tell people. I mean, I have some expertise because I've been involved in this for a long time, but I'm not going to sit here and pontificate to people. I'm going to open it up and say, hey, this is what goes on. This is the reality of a case. Did you realize this? And people go, no, I never realized that. Let them kind of examine it and figure it out on their own. They're the best messengers as to whether we're doing the right thing or the wrong thing.
Absolutely. And so how can those that are interested in participating or being a part of this community in, commission engage? And what are the prerequisites for, consideration?
The only thing, you have to live in San Bernardino County. And so we're in our second community commission. We're about halfway through our second group. So this is the second round of individuals, and everybody's going to serve for about 18 months, 2 years. But now's the time that if you live in the county, find out who your district supervisor is. There's 5 districts. Find out which district you live in. Go to your supervisor in their office and go, hey, I heard about this community commission that Anderson's running at the DA's office. I want to be considered for that. Put your name in, and then you would be considered for that. The qualifications are you just have to live in the county and be willing to come and basically engage in discussions and be willing to engage. You have to be a listener, but you also have to be willing to engage and not be afraid to speak up and to speak out and to be able to listen. That's really the only qualification. So I can tell you that the first group, when I told them, hey, you guys, time's coming to an end because we've got to expand this, people are like, you mean we can't do this forever? I'm like, well, what good would that do? Right? So it's a good thing. So you get people and it's really good stuff. So that's it. Just be a member, be a resident of the county, and contact your supervisor, your respective supervisor.
Wonderful. And so where can people have access to finding out where their supervisor is? Is there a county website?
Yeah.
Is there a quick search they can do? How do they find out who the
Yep.
representative is?
So to confirm the supervisor they would be represented by in the county, you can go to San Bernardino County website. That's easy to find. Just put in your search engine, County of San Bernardino, it'll come up, and then the supervisors are going to be on there. Click each supervisor; it'll tell you what cities that they represent. Right. So if you're in the 4th district, you're going to be out in the West End. If you're in the 1st district, you're going to be up in the high desert. And then you're going to have 2, 3, and 4 are going to kind of be in between, right? You're going to cover San Bernardino. You're going to cover parts of different areas. So that's the way to look at it. So it's the most helpful thing to do it. And they can even log on to our website and find our internet and send in an email. And we can help them that way.
Beautiful. Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so for those listening, I'm Yvette Walker on Southern California Business Report on ABC News and Talks, KMET 1490 AM, 98.1 FM, and KMET TV, talking to Jason Anderson, District Attorney for San Bernardino County, talking about supporting victims of crime, honoring the humanity of all involved in the criminal justice system, and restoring a culture of service and accountability to the District Attorney's Office when we return.
Every 2 seconds, someone needs a blood transfusion. Be on the giving side. Livestream Blood Bank supports patients in 80 Southern California hospitals. Call 1-800-TRY-GIVING for more information and to set an appointment.
The University of La Verne is rated first in California for alumni satisfaction. Learn more about accelerated programs offered online and on campus in La Verne, Irvine, Ontario, Burbank, or College of the Canyons. Visit go.laverne.edu. The University of La Verne. go.laverne.edu.
City of Hope is driven to making a difference in the lives of people with cancer and diabetes. We accomplish this by conducting innovative research and providing outstanding care. If you or a loved one has received a cancer diagnosis, go to cityofhope.org to learn more about how our innovative approach could change your outcome.
Ontario International Airport is on to a better way to fly with over 65 daily non-stop flights to more than 20 major destinations and the easiest airport experience in Southern California. Visit flyonto.com/Ontario to learn more about Ontario International Airport today.
Cal State San Bernardino is home to the only School of Entrepreneurship in California. With globally ranked degree programs, you can start your journey today to become a successful entrepreneur. Learn more and connect at entre.csusb.edu.
Hi, I'm San Bernardino County Sheriff Shannon Dake. If you're looking to start an exciting career in law enforcement and make a difference in your community, we are hiring dispatchers, nurses, deputies, laterals, and many more. For a complete list of our jobs and more information, visit sheriffsjobs.com.
Welcome back. For those listening, I'm Yvette Walker on Southern California Business Report on ABC News and Talks, KMET 1490 AM, 98.1 FM, and KMET TV, talking to Jason Anderson, District Attorney for San Bernardino County, talking about supporting victims of crime, honoring the humanity of all involved in the criminal justice system, and restoring a culture of service and accountability to the District Attorney's Office. Thank you again for being with us today, DA Anderson.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So before the break, we were talking about what your office does, what they have done, 65,000 cases a year. I mean, what a number. And all of your efforts that you are spearheading to educate the community on the various dynamics and facets of your office. So thank you so much for that. As we were talking, I know one of the major challenges, I guess you could say, as it relates to crime right now is fentanyl, right? The narcotic that is just wreaking havoc in our communities. Please talk about what it is that you're doing. And I understand you're also conducting an educational program alongside the feds.
Yes. So it like everywhere, all over the country, we have seen an unbelievable increase in fentanyl on the street. And we've seen an incredible increase in fentanyl overdoses. And so it's been a real problem. What we've tried to do is kind of understand how do we proceed in this kind of new era in terms of a drug that is prolific because it's so cheap, but it is so deadly. So one of the things that we've done early on when we knew that it was going to be a problem is that we did our own educational component out of the DA's office on our social media sites to try to warn young people that really there's no such thing as a safe street drug anymore. 5, 6, 7 years ago, you start to see the proliferation of prescribed drugs that kids would get a hold of, whether it's Xanax or some other things of that nature. That is a problem. But now what you see is those drugs that they thought were recreational are now laced with synthetic fentanyl because it makes those drugs cheaper. And so therefore the profit margin for the dealer is much higher. So there's a greater incentive to sell more of them because people think they're getting a cheap version of Xanax when they're really getting fentanyl. And so the drug dealer is actually making more money because what they're selling for $100 costs literally $20 to get. But they don't know what's in it. So the educational component is that there's no such thing as a safe street drug any longer. Obviously, the enforcement side of it is that we need to go after people who are dealing it or having it in large quantities, that they're transporting it or selling it. Unfortunately, I'll be very honest and say that in the last 5 or 6 years, the state of California has really undercut any teeth in narcotic laws. I understand that there certainly can be addiction. There can be issues with nonviolent possessory drug cases when you're dealing with methamphetamine or other things. This is not methamphetamine. This is not cocaine. This is a deadly poison, and we need to get a handle on it. We have tried ways to increase the punishment, and we really haven't gotten any traction because we're still in that mode where the legislature here says, well, we're not going to turn anything into a major crime because we think that's going to equate to mass incarceration. None of that makes any sense when you're having young people die at a rate that we've never seen before. So aside the educational component locally, we have partnered with the feds at a local level, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI, the DEA, we actually have members of our office who are on their advisory boards to help get the message out and to facilitate resources to be able to educate the public about the dangers of what they think may be one drug when it's really going to be fentanyl. We have one case that we've actually are prosecuting somebody for murder because of them providing fentanyl to somebody. We have a couple other cases under review. So this is an emerging area. You're going to see the law is going to have to respond to this, and if it doesn't, shame on the people who don't understand the realities on the street. We're trying to deal with it as best we can. Through the educational component, we're actually part of a local task force with the sheriff's department and other agencies to try to root this drug out and get it out of our county.
So can you please speak to the current penalties for fentanyl, distribution, and how would you like to see those penalties changed?
Well, there's two things. So the sale and distribution of narcotics, no matter what it is still a felony, but you're not going to go to state prison on those cases like you used to before. If you get convicted of one trafficking offense and you pick up a subsequent trafficking offense, it used to be that the first trafficking offense could increase your new one by 3 years. Well, they've done away with all those enhancements. And so you can traffic as much as you want, get convicted, and it's going to be no greater penalty than it was the first time you traffic. So that's obviously a problem. There's no disincentive to do it. And there's not really been a response to the deaths. What we've tried to push is if somebody does get convicted of a trafficking case, that they're put on notice that if they get convicted again and somebody dies as a result of them furnishing drugs to somebody, that they could be prosecuted for murder. Very similar to what happens in a DUI, by the way. So everybody knows for the last 20 years, if you get convicted of a DUI in court, the judge will tell you if you pick up a second DUI and you hurt and kill somebody, as a result, you can be charged with a felony or murder. We have no problem giving that notice. We want the same notice as it relates to drug trafficking because the deaths are stacking up more than DUI deaths, but we've had no luck there. So we're trying to, again, the only way in which you really can get a handle on it are those cases in which you can prove that somebody was reckless in terms of delivering a drug that they should have known or knew was fentanyl and it killed somebody, or they've supplied that person in the past with drugs. They know that person had an overdose and they supplied them again with drugs and it results in a death. In those instances, we can charge murder, and we think that's appropriate. And we're not really worried about sending a message. We're worried about making sure people are responsible for their actions. But we're a little bit behind here in terms of where the laws need to catch up to make up for the really impact it's having on the street with these numbers of deaths.
Right. And so, what has the greatest challenge been with prosecuting fentanyl cases, and what policies are being worked on to curb the distribution of this drug?
What we're trying to do is, it's in those cases where a death occurs, unfortunately, see very similar circumstances each time. So with the task force, timing is everything. To be able to get in on those cases, to investigate where the victim got the drugs from. Is there some social media posts that indicate, where it came from? Some indication that the dealer knew that the stuff was dangerous and they delivered it anyway, or they knew it was fentanyl and they didn't tell the user it was fentanyl. Those types of things. Anything where you can show kind of a reckless disregard in terms of that. Otherwise, what we're doing with people that are just trafficking the drug or caught with it, we're really trying to hold them as responsible as we possibly can, get convictions, put them on probation so that they're monitored and so they don't keep doing it in terms of the impact that it's having. We would like to see the legislature deal with fentanyl in a very special way, the same way you would deal with DUIs. And I tell everybody, you got to remember, 35, 40 years ago, domestic violence wasn't taken serious. I mean, let's be honest, right? If couples had a dispute in the home and law enforcement rolled out, law enforcement oftentimes would tell people, hey, you guys just need to work it out, right? Just work it out.
Right.
Well, what happened? What started happening 35, 40 years ago? Victims, particularly women, were going to the hospital with serious bodily injury, or they were found dead, right? Because there was no intervention. And it wasn't until enough of those injuries and awareness came about that, think about the legislators back 40 years ago who would have said, I'm not going to make domestic violence a felony. We're not going to add great bodily injury. Those are the same folks now are saying, we're not going to deal with fentanyl the way we should because the bodies are piling up just as bad as it was in domestic violence. So we're trying to get that message across to people in a way that, listen, we don't want to throw everybody in prison, right? But if you have the impact of fentanyl the way it's having now, we need to intervene. It's our responsibility. And we're in the driver's seat in the criminal justice system to make those decisions. As I told you at the top of the hour, we control what's charged. We control what goes into the system. Sometimes we need to devote resources to an area where we can objectively show it's having a horrible impact on the community.
Right. And so, as you talk about fentanyl, what are you seeing as you look at law enforcement on the ground, and what is an overview of what those boots on the ground are encountering?
Well, law enforcement's very good at investigating these cases. They take time to develop intel. They take time to develop sources. They're very good at tracking social media. They're very good at the computers. And so, while members of the community that are dealing dope think that they're sophisticated, law enforcement's very well trained. So the task force that they've put together, the relationship that we have in the county, particularly among our sheriff and our other police chiefs, they work like no other area in Southern California or Northern California, anywhere else that I've known throughout the state. They really will work together to try to figure out, okay, it's here in this one city, now it's moving over to your city, and they'll communicate with those other police departments to try to break up these rings and try to seize those drugs. But it's so cheap and it's coming over so easily from China and from other places that it's hard to stem the tide. What you try to do is just beat it back and make sure that large quantity doesn't get into the hands of people where they're going to experience a fatal overdose. So they're working like crazy. We're working with them. We have a couple of prosecutors that review just these types of fentanyl cases. So there's some expertise that is needed. And so we're all trying to work our resources together to combat the issue.
Right. And so you also mentioned the fact that it could be any type of recreational drug, but it can be laced with fentanyls, and they're laced with it. How frequently are you encountering that as you view the landscape of that epidemic?
Most of the time, there's not a drug out there other than methamphetamine and cocaine typically are going to be on their own contain methamphetamine and cocaine. But what you're seeing the pill forms of drugs that young people think are. And I can't even think of all of them. I know that Xanax is popular, OxyContin, pain pills, all this stuff that looks like it's what you would think would be a pain pill or an antidepressant or a sleep aid. Now all that stuff, it looks like that drug, but what it is, it's lethal doses of fentanyl. Because the lethal dose of fentanyl is a lot cheaper to package in a pill container that looks like it's Xanax, which would run you $300. people think they're getting all this Xanax for $100, but it's really just it's fentanyl, and it's killing them. And so, that's what we're trying to say is that, this is really what you're seeing. It's not the common drugs that we dealt with in the past, and I think that's why the legislatures are concerned about, it's going to be this war on drugs again. It's going to be this, put everybody in jail. It's not what it's going to be. It's going to be put people in jail who are dealing with a reckless disregard for the lives of others, knowing that the product that they're selling is not what they're selling. So it's fraud and it's poison, and both of those things ought to be tackled aggressively.
Absolutely. And so what advice do you give to parents, right? We're all parents. I have 3 teenage kids of my own, as they're approached by friends or drug dealers when considering what they believe to be non-fentanyl narcotics.
Well, obviously I'm going to encourage everybody to not use narcotics that aren't prescribed to you by a doctor, right? It's the same way I would discourage anybody from drinking who's under the age of 21. Now, in reality, do we know that people drink under the age of 21 and people take drugs that aren't prescribed by their doctors? Unfortunately, we do understand that for a lot of different reasons. We want to let people know that there are services that if they're addicted, that we want to see them get better. We don't want to see them go to jail in those instances. But the key is you've got to let kids know that even a trusted source, they can't even be sure of what's in that pill container and what's in that pill. There is no safe street drug any longer. And the analogy I would give again, I remember, the advice that I've given to young people is that if you go to a party, particularly young women, and I have a daughter, don't ever drink from a cup that someone else gave you. If you're going to drink from a cup at a party, make sure it's a cup that you poured, right? And that sounds very simple, but we remember the days of rohypnol and all the other drugs that these drinks would be laced, and these young ladies would not have any idea what was going on, and even young men. And then, 5 hours later, they wake up, they can't remember what happened, but then they obviously realize what occurred. Well, that's horrible. But with fentanyl, you may never wake up. So don't ever take a pill that wasn't prescribed to you by your doctor or that you didn't bring from your own source. Otherwise, you're risking what we would have risked back in the day with taking a red Solo cup and drinking out of it that somebody else gave us. You just can't be certain what's in there.
Right, absolutely. So in addition to fentanyl, what are additional areas of focus that your office is dedicated to presently?
Well, because of the backlog of cases in COVID, we have operated under emergency orders where a number of cases, the majority of cases, have gotten continued because we haven't had the courtroom resources to try all of the cases that we have in the system. And that's a concern because what's done is back up even defendants' rights to speedy trial. Their cases should have gone to trial a lot sooner, but because of the lack of resource, we simply can't get them to trial. Mm-hmm. Those emergency orders are open, and all of our courts are open, and they are consistently, aggressively trying cases. Every courtroom that tries cases in San Bernardino County every week has an ongoing trial involved. So that's where our priority is, particularly in our more serious and violent cases. And that way, if we're able to obtain convictions, then we can sentence those individuals. But the other side of that is that we need to make sure the defendant's right to a speedy trial is being respected. And we want to get those cases that are the oldest to trial because many times those people are in custody. So they have a right to have their case heard too. So that's currently our priority, is in trying to release to some degree the backlog of those cases in terms of it. So we think that's the right thing to do, but we realize that we have new cases coming in the door every day. And so we're dealing with those cases. Right now, we're prioritizing our resources, assisting with the court to identify those cases that are most critical, that need to go to trial, that need to get in the system, that need to have some finality in the decisions. And that's what we're focusing on right now in terms of it. And we're also, there's a big focus on us, hiring new people. I mean, our office is big and we need to grow. This area, the Inland Empire, is, I think, the 5th fastest growing economy in the country right now, which is a great thing for us because it assists all of us. But we need to have the proper balance of resources to make sure that people feel safe and are safe. And a big part of our system is how that is. So we're doing a push to try to hire additional people, and in hopes with our board of supervisors, they understand that, and we can have the financial means necessary to do so.
Right. So can you talk about what the courts are doing to assist with the backlog of cases that you're also obviously trying to get through?
The courts have been great. We have met for months and months and months preparing for these emergency orders to be over, and they were lifted about a month ago. So coordinating with them, identifying the priorities, the court letting us know these are the way we're going to identify the cases of the oldest ones that have time problems that could potentially be dismissed if we don't try them within a time frame. Those cases could get dismissed. We have worked with the courts to identify those most serious cases, and they've let myself know, they've let my counterpart in the public defender's office know, the private bar know. So they have really done a good job of looking at the calendars and managing that, and we have done that along with them. And we've assured them that if we're going to announce ready for a case, we will be ready, and the court's holding us to that. So it really is this urgency that the court has done a phenomenal job of managing. When you think about, there's 2.1 million people in this county. If we average 65,000 cases a year, but we've been on a standstill in terms of those cases getting through the system, you can imagine we have a couple thousand cases that are backlogged waiting for trial. So without the court's really tremendous effort in helping us to identify the ones that need to go, we would be on the receiving end of a lot of cases getting dismissed. So that means victims aren't getting their justice, and people are getting away potentially with crimes. So the court has done a great job in helping us do that. We couldn't ask for a better response.
So in light of that, what can victims do to do their part to ensure they're working alongside your office and the courts to make your job smoother?
Anybody who is a victim in San Bernardino County, the first thing they need to do is obviously report it to law enforcement. Don't ever be afraid to report it to law enforcement. Report it to law enforcement because they're going to be the agency that comes out initially and takes that report. The next thing to do is to contact our office. We have a phenomenal victim services bureau made up of over 50 victim witness advocates that will personally deal with each and every victim and or witness of a crime and help them understand the process. The stuff that I talked about at the beginning of the hour, you can imagine as a layperson without being under stress, that's a lot of stuff to understand. But if you come here and you've been injured, or your loved one's been injured, or your child's been injured, or you've been, something's been stolen of great value, your car, you can't get to work anymore, coming here would just be very traumatic. So we want to help people with that. So come to our office, make contact with us. We will assist you with every resource that we can assist you with. Something as simple as helping you get restitution back because of something that was taken, or in the worst case scenarios, being able to help out with expenses of either medical expenses, counseling services, or even burial expenses for loved ones who may have been murdered. So they need to contact us. They never need to shy away from that. They can do that by coming to our office. Law enforcement agencies will give them our contact. They can go on our website, San Bernardino County District Attorney. We actually have a digital victim advocate. We have an advocate 24/7 that people can interact with on our website and in real time. So like a chat situation. So they don't have to wait from 8 to 5 when the brick and mortar normally is open. They can go to our website, access our digital victim advocate that we rotate it. They can get all their questions answered there.
That's wonderful. So in light of the legal landscape, as we talk about, the downgrading of a lot of violent crimes, are there tools or resources that can assist victims of crime to make their case stronger and have a greater chance of having a favorable outcome?
Well, yes. I mean, they always need to be honest with law enforcement. They need to be honest with us in terms of what's going on in their life. We will try to support them as best we can. Our response, Yvette, is that we talk all the time. We have to give honest responses to victims. We need to let them know the reality of the system, what's going to happen, prepare them for that, and then they need to go forward. If victims feel like that they are being underserved by the law, the best way they can make changes is they mobilize and they talk to their legislators, or they talk to nonprofit groups who say, hey, listen, this person, their family member was the victim of a fentanyl overdose, right? And the person's dead, and they're hearing that the only thing that's going to happen to the dealer is going to get probation. That there's a problem with that, right? At the federal level, that's not what happens. If you deal fentanyl and it results in a death, you're looking at 20 years. Now, I'm not saying we do that at the state level, but the minimal stuff that we have now is not sufficient. So victims need to make their voice heard through the help of our office, through the help of nonprofits. But at a local level, they always need to feel comfortable coming to us and letting us know what their needs are. We are equipped to be able to meet those needs, to counsel with them, to be honest with them, and help get them into the resources. There's a number of community partners that we deal with, not just our office, all over the county, that are willing to be able to assist victims in many different ways. They just need to come and feel comfortable enough communicating with us so we can get them those services. They can do that in person. Like I said, they can do that online through our internet. They can call us, all that kind of stuff. That's what we do.
Perfect. So, can you just give us like a super brief rundown of the top crimes and the statute of limitations, just so that our audience can have an idea?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's probably easier to go from the less serious up to the serious.
Okay.
So we deal with a lot of misdemeanors. Generally, the statute of limitations for when the charges have to be filed on those is a year. If you're dealing with general felonies, the statute of limitations is generally you have to file those from the time they're discovered or they occur within 3 or 4 years, depending on the circumstances. Sometimes if it involves theft, embezzlement, or fraud, the statute of limitations starts when it's discovered, right? Because a lot of times business owners don't know that their business is being defrauded, and then they find out 3 years later. And if the statute of limitations says 3 years from the date of the incident, then we wouldn't be able to do anything.
Right.
It would be 3 or 4 years from the date of discovery of the fraud. Sex crimes are different, particularly if they're sex crimes involving minors. Sometimes the statute of limitations goes up to 10 years. Sometimes it's no statute of limitations, depending on some of the nuances within the penal code. And then you're dealing with any crimes in which there's a potential of life being the punishment. Then there's no statute of limitations, obviously including murder. So there's never statute of limitations on that. So it's a technical thing. Victims need to know that if there's an issue with that, if they feel afraid, they just need to ask us about that, so they wouldn't wait and think, oh my goodness, nothing can happen. Consult with us, and we can try to help as best we can in those areas.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. So for everyone listening, don't forget to look for us on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Check us out on scbrtalk.com, and don't forget to download the free live streaming app on Google Play or the Apple App Store. Don't miss my interview with Sam Moreno. She is the CEO and founder of Thunder, Lightning, and Peace, a nonprofit organization geared towards empowering veterans with the tools they need to find their passion. This young, resilient 17-year-old high schooler decided to act and create this 501c3. Thunder, Lightning, and Peace aims to provide the grassroots movement the community needs to collectively take action and create change for our veterans and military heroes. Volunteering as far back as she can remember, she has been serving with various organizations in the community. On top of running her nonprofit, doing speaking engagements, and volunteering graciously, she has remained an honor student at the top 6% of her class, a part of various clubs, and is a member of the Etiwanda Cheer Squad. Her passion is to be a military trauma surgeon, serving alongside our servicemen and women. Sam's road to this point hasn't always been the smoothest, and she understands it will probably never be linear. But one thing she does know is that it is crucial to act, not be stagnant, but take the initiative, react, and empower our community to do the same. Next week, we will have Ben Dake, a technology consultant in Southern California with 28 years of experience consulting on matters ranging from acquisitions of companies and large property upgrades to the day-to-day management of both small and medium-sized businesses. Ben started to dabble in cryptocurrencies back in 2013 with now popular Dogecoin, but got more heavily involved in 2018. Ben created a proprietary trading algorithm and automated it for use in the crypto space with different exchanges and uses to manage the funds of family office he is part of. On the business side, Ben is part of the technical crypto arm of Blue Ocean Assets Management, or BOEM. Ben is leading the blockchain side of the proprietary products that BOEM will be bringing to market, including overseeing smart contract development, security auditing, and infrastructure management. Ben is also the CTO of a bond offering that will be using tokenization to come to market in the fourth quarter of 22. So don't miss it.
This has been the Southern California Business Report with Yvette Walker on KMET